Hey guys, for our weekly NFL DFS live stream. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over some of the injuries for the slate. We're going to talk about our player pool. We're going to go position by position. There's some of my favorite targets through some ownership numbers, some game theory situations, some stacks I'll be using, all that kind of fun stuff. Of course, if you guys have any questions at any point, go ahead and feel free to go ahead and put them down in the chat. I'll get to them whenever I see them. And of course, we have the Sunday night game tonight. So if you guys haven't already seen my preview, just wanted to plug that. That's for the Steelers-Seahawks game. That's why we got the Steelers jersey on. Very excited for that game. So without further delay, let's hop right into the injury report here for tonight. So going to share my screen and hop over to the injury report over on ESPN. So I have this screen sharing now. So this is for the 1 o'clock games. Obviously, not everyone has been handled yet. We have quite a few guys that are game time decisions that we're going to have to check on a little bit later in the stream. But on offense, Sammy Watkins was already rolled out. We already knew this. And Rashad Bateman going to be making his first start of the year. So at this point, did not have Bateman in my projections. Obviously, somebody who's going to play a factor in this game now. Should play the wide receiver 2 role here and is very cheap in a very high scoring game. So I'm going to have to talk about that when we get to our projections in a little bit. Damian Williams, we already know he had COVID, not going to be playing. Allen Robinson should be able to play. He's practicing for at least a little bit of the week. Joe Mixon, again, expected to play. You guys can see that there. Jamal Williams expected to go. DeAndre Swift also expected to go. Hawkins and all these guys on Detroit listed as questionable, all expected to play. Maybe they're just a little bit more bullish on putting guys on that injury report. Rodrigo Blankenship is out. His hip is injured. That's why we saw him struggle so much on Monday Night Football. So obviously something was going on there. They do have a replacement. T.Y. Hilton should play for the first time this entire year. Somebody who's already in my projections. Don't love him, though. It's going to be on a little bit of a snap count. But if he ends up scoring a touchdown, that kind of thing, he's extremely cheap, near the minimum price tag on this week. Tyreek Hill is expected to play, but we're going to have to keep an eye on that just because if he's out, that creates a ton of value on that team. So somebody who's one of my highest owned players on the slate as of right now. So hopefully he ends up playing. Same thing with Mike Williams, also projects very well. This is a high scoring game between the Ravens and Chargers. So he's going to be questionable. So we're going to have to keep an eye on those two. Saquon Barkley and Kenny Galladay, we already knew about this, already rolled out. Darius Slayton, questionable. Same thing with Tony. Those two are expected to play, though. So we're going to have to see that. Sterling Shepard, no injury tag this week, going to be completely healthy. Antonio Gibson always has a questionable tag, is supposed to play, though. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. Same thing with Terry McLaurin. Guy is perpetually injured in the NFL. Speaking of guys who are always injured, Curtis Samuel, right? Somebody who literally never plays because he's made of glass. Adam Humphries, somebody I talked about in my values video. I'll be playing a good amount of them this week. Then we have Diami Brown, also questionable, but should be able to play. Again, you guys can see Antonio Golden would end up playing if he's out, but Diami Brown should be expected to suit up. Let's talk about a few of the injuries that we have no idea on. Obviously, very early in the day. For the 4 o'clock games, Chase Edmonds questionable. Should not be a problem. Nick Chubb already rolled out. Kareem Hunt questionable. So he hasn't practiced very lot this week. It could just be to keep some of the load off of him, right? He's going to have to take 25, 30 touches if he ends up playing in this game, just so they don't go off of their typical game script. If he ends up not playing, Ernest Johnson is like the play of the century. He's the dead minimum at running back. I do expect Hunt to play, though. Obviously, was one of my core plays this week. Still standing behind that. He's somebody I absolutely love. We're going to have to check out the ownership, though. As of right now, one of the highest owned running backs in the entire slate. Just need to really get an idea of how highly owned he's actually going to be. If it's closer to 40%, something like that, he may end up being a fade. But if he's hovering right around 20%, that is something I'm going to be willing to eat. Let's talk about Elliott, a couple other injuries. Ezekiel Elliott is questionable. He's going to play, but he's going to be on a snap count. Ended up falling on the pylon, if you guys saw it last week. It looked a lot worse than it was, especially at first. He was like not moving at all on the ground. I expect Tony Pollard to have a massive week. So if you guys saw my core plays video, you know I'm already all over him there. Don't love this Denver situation at all with these running backs. If Gordon ends up sitting for whatever reason, I mean, he's been questionable for this entire year, but has played. Williams would have a very good situation there. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. I talked about that last week with Williams. Obviously, Gordon ended up suiting up anyways. Not sure why he's been questionable for this entire year. I mean, obviously, it says he has a hip issue right here. Not an expert on what's going wrong with Gordon, but he's had that designation for the entire year and has still played. Damian Williams, questionable. He is a lot more questionable than somebody like Gordon. Obviously had the injury a few weeks back with the ribs, and it's clearly bothering him. going to have to keep an eye on that. So that's all for the injuries there. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through my projections. So we're going to go position by position with my projections, starting off with our quarterbacks and finishing off with our tight ends. So these, by the way, if you guys are not a member of my NFL Patreon page already, these are my Patreon projections. So these are for my main slate picks for this week. Obviously, you guys can see we have opponent rank on there, projected points, points per dollar, all that kind of fun stuff, ownership, and whether they're in my player pool. So if you want direct access to this, I post this on my Patreon. We obviously have the Discord server where you guys can talk with me, talk with the rest of the community. It's all very valuable information. Again, it's just $8 for the month. So it's not like you're going out there, paying $10s, $20 a week or anything like that. It's a quarter a week. So well worth it there. Link will be in the description if you guys are watching the replay for that. If not, it's obviously just GS Luke at Patreon. So with that being said, with the plug out of the way, shameless plug, let's go through a few guys that I like for this slate. At the top, we have Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be relatively expensive on this slate, but a good matchup against the Washington football team. So you guys can see one of my highest projected plays in the entire slate, even in terms of point per dollar and everything like that. So really like him in that matchup. Don't really have to go into too much detail there, to play Patrick Mahomes. Kyler Murray, $7,900. He's somebody who made my fades list this week, and it really comes down to injury. He's somebody who's dealing with that right shoulder injury, and we saw something very similar at the end of last season. So, went out there, lost a little bit of the power on his throws, was a little bit less accurate, and had some bad games. He was an MVP candidate for a good portion of that year, and towards the end, pretty much gave it away and gave it to Aaron Rodgers, right? No one was talking about Aaron Rodgers as an MVP candidate until the end of the year when Murray ended up giving it away. And it was essentially like, oh, well, we can't give it to Murray now. Who has to win the MVP? Not taking anything away from A-Rod, but Murray really coughed that up. And it was due to the same type of injury. So I'm worried about it. Somebody who obviously I have him projected to be owned at 6.4% of lineup. So obviously people are a little bit cautious about that situation. But for me, somebody that I'll be fading in full confidence, understanding the injuries, not ideal. Now going to Lamar Jackson, somebody I don't like using in stacks this week. So just because he has so much rushing upside, just because he can vulture so many touchdowns away from the rest of the offense, somebody I'm all right using as a one-off. On the other side of things, though, with Justin Herbert, one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. So obviously, very good matchup in this Ravens game and one of the highest totals on the entire slate. Also a team that is really banged up in the secondary. They typically have one of the stronger secondaries in football. We have Marlon Humphrey dealing with a little bit of a lower leg injury. It's been a little bit hobbled the last few weeks. And even though he's played, hasn't quite looked like himself. Obviously, Marcus Peters, IR, dealt with that devastating injury at the beginning of the year. A few other players, missing a defense as well. So that all ends up adding up. They've gone torched from time to time as a result. We've seen that. So yeah, Justin Herbert this week, he could be a lot more expensive on this slate, could be upwards of $8,000, and I'd still like him as a play. But as price tag is a smash play. He's obviously going to be a little bit popular, but I think it's well warranted on the slate. Sorry, my cat's whining. Hopefully you guys can't hear that. Aaron Rodgers is going to be up next at $7,200. He is playing against the Bears, and I think there's a huge blowout risk here. Obviously the Bears have been a dumpster fire to this point. Justin Fields, I don't want to say, I feel bad for him, right? He's just dealing with not only a very poor offense, bad play calling, and just overall really bad situation to be in as a young quarterback. And that's essentially exactly what they were trying to avoid, right? They brought in Andy Dalton. They still kept Nick Foles in full hopes that they would not have to play Justin Fields. And you've seen the result of having to get him in there early. He's looked horrible. So even though Aaron Rodgers should be a decent play on this slate, he could very well be the reason this ends up being a blowout. I think he just has, obviously less projected attempts as a result. Only projected to throw the ball about 37 times in this game rather than his typical 44, 45 type range. And that can make a huge difference in terms of his production. So in terms of going by the numbers and what we project for in terms of game flow, Aaron Rodgers not in a situation to really go out and get a ceiling game. Up here in this Ravens-Chargers game, not only do we have a competitive game, but also a very high-scoring game on both sides. So if Justin Herbert goes out there and has a very good day, it's extremely likely that Lamar Jackson's also putting up numbers, right? So they're kind of drafting off of each other. They're not taking away from each other's ceiling by being a bad team. So just that's why he's a fade for me this week. He's not somebody that I'm prioritizing. Same thing with Dak Prescott. Bill Belichick obviously one of the best defensive minds. I'm not even going to say right now, but in NFL history. We saw it against Tom Brady. I mean, they looked like absolute world beaters and have this entire year, except their matchup against the Patriots. And they ended up shipping off Stephon Gilmore. People are calling Bill Belichick crazy, everything like that, but it's still working, and it's been highly efficient to this point. So Dak Prescott, typically somebody I'm all over. You can see the ownership here is extremely inflated on him. I have him right now at 6.5%. I would be very surprised if it did not come in closer to 8, maybe even 9% ownership. There's been plenty of steam around the industry. That price tag there at $7,100 looks a lot better than it really is. In reality, Justin Herbert is only $200 more, and Lamar Jackson is only $300 more. Typically, we have a lot larger dispersion between our second-priced quarterback and our fifth and sixth priced quarterbacks, but this week the pricing is a little bit wonky, so we're gonna get some things like this as a result. So I'm much more willing to go to somebody priced a little bit higher up the board, right? At only just $200, $300 more that project much higher. So these guys garnering a lot of ownership, I get it. It's a little bit of psychology right there. You think you're getting a better price than you are. I'm going to be fading them just ownership wise and matchup wise. Not really what I'm looking for. Next, we have Matthew Stafford here. Against the Giants, it's an all right matchup. He's somebody who's going to make my player pool, but I'm not absolutely thrilled about the play. The Giants are an absolute dumpster fire due to injury. Daniel Jones is expected to play, coming back from the concussion protocol, but they have a lot of guys down on that offense. Obviously Saquon Barkley, they're going to be without a few of their wide receivers. A few guys questionable for today as well, so you could have a few more guys go down. It's a tough matchup too, right? This Rams team, the best team against the pass in the NFL in terms of their cornerbacks, their safeties, everything like that. I expect the Rams to win pretty handedly. I expect them to do it by running the ball quite a bit as well. One of the better running teams in terms of efficiency. So for me, I'm trying to target guys like Darrell Henderson a little bit more excited about playing guys like that. But obviously Matthew Stafford, never going to be a bad play. I like that price tag there. So he's somebody I'm probably going to be matching the field on this week. Somebody I'm not trying to get a ton of leverage on. Obviously, there's guys in that mid 7K range I'm a little bit more bullish on for tomorrow. And I'll remind you guys, if you guys have any questions at any point, it doesn't have to be about what we're talking about. It can be about anything on the slate. Go ahead and throw it down in the chat. I'll get to it when I see it here. And speaking of that, Robin Birdie says Thielen or Marquis Brown. So off the top of my head, they're relatively similar price tags there, but Thielen definitely has the better matchup. Marquis Brown, definitely going to get some extra targets this week just because of the injury that I was talking about before. To Sammy Watkins, you also have Rashad Bateman making his first start ever. I don't know. I like both plays. They're both people that are in my player pool. If I had to go a lean, though, I'd say Thielen just because of the matchup. The Chargers have been a much better secondary than people are giving up credit to at this point. And then a quarter per week Patreon is outrageous. I'll join. Yeah, when I put it that way, it's a little bit outrageous, right? It's like it's $1 a month, and I was like, yeah, that's a quarter a week. Jesus Christ, right? And another thing down here, we got another comment. CBO says, I see Osborne and Humphreys are high value picks in the model this week. Why? So Humphreys, there's an injury situation over there in Washington, right? So Curtis Samuel's not going to be playing. Your Damian Brown is questionable. And essentially they're just out of bodies, right? Even Terry McLaurin is hurting. So Humphreys going to be starting. We know that, and probably going to get some extra targets. He's the only guy there who's healthy. So a lot of that comes down to opportunity right there. Anytime I look at my modeling, it comes down to opportunity, right? I do it by the numbers. I look at people's efficiency on a per snap basis, and I project their snaps, right? And if they're an efficient player, if they're getting some extra snaps, they're going to look really good in my numbers. So hopefully that's the explanation for you right there. And then Osborne, very good injuries, very good game situation, right? That Panthers-Vikings game expected to be a relatively high-scoring game. So same kind of ordeal, right? Anytime you have a high-scoring game, players' efficiency numbers are going to go up, and they're going to pop in my model. So not an injury situation for the Vikings, just a little bit more of a game situation there. Sammy Watkins rolled out. Yeah, I know. So that's what I was talking about with Marquis Brown. Rashad Bateman is going to start. So he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver. Pretty interesting. McLaurin's playing. Bateman's active. Yeah, knew all that. Yep. We did the injury report about like 5 minutes ago. We're going to do one in about 20 minutes where I'm going to go through it again because obviously there's going to be a few more updates. But I think all of those ones were on there. I don't think we have any new ones as of yet, guys. Let's go through the end of the quarterbacks here. So Joe Burrow, if you guys saw my fades and sleepers, somebody I am targeting on this slate. So Lions defense, has been okay to this point. They've definitely lit up a lot of points. A lot of it has been rushing production, though. So if you're looking at modeling, at least in terms of an archetype, a player versus archetype, he's not going to be somebody that pops, but Joe Burrow, a very high volume offense type guy, somebody who's extremely efficient. And overall, I just like playing him in general, just has a huge ceiling. I mean, we saw some 30-point performances from him as a rookie, and he's due for something like that to come. We haven't seen that type of performance here in 2021, but definitely has the arm talent to do that. And obviously, Jamar Chase, very good weapon to pair him up with in terms of stacks. Also, like pairing him up with a few of the other cheaper options like Tyler Boyd, that kind of thing. So Joe Burrow, definitely someone I'll be playing. We were just talking about KJ Osborne, that Vikings-Panthers game that I love targeting. He's just cheap stack, right? He's only $6,200, so you're getting a little bit of a price discount going down to Kirk Cousins. I have him projected for still over 20 points, 21.6 points. So still relatively high floor right there. And again, some of the best weapons to stack in the entire NFL. So you have Thielen, who I was talking about before. He's relatively cheap. He is in that high $5,000 range. You also have Justin Jefferson. He's relatively expensive, but also probably not going to be garnering as much ownership as he should. Obviously, KJ Osborne, extremely cheap. Obviously went off in weeks 1, week 2. Had a little bit of a rough start there in weeks 3 through 5. But I expect a bounce back. He's somebody who's a good deep play threat, has a ton of air yards. So love going there. Sam Darnold, he's going to be a little bit chalky. So you can see it up here in terms of 7% ownership, that kind of thing. I don't hate the play. Obviously has a little bit of rushing upside. I like that game in general, that Vikings Panthers game. So I don't hate the play, just somebody who I can't fit into my pool. So that's why you see he's blank right there. I don't really have any opinion on him. Baker Mayfield, not going to be playing. He's dealing with an injury, kind of like Kyler Murray is. And both quarterbacks are crippled in this game. So at the beginning of the week, someone in my Discord chat mentioned playing the Cardinals defense or playing the Browns defense. And I kind of dismissed it. I was like, what do you mean? That makes no sense. These offenses are so good. The more and more I think about it, these quarterbacks are crippled. So this could be a very low scoring game. There's gonna be a lot of running here. Both of them are dealing with shoulder injuries and at quarterback, and they're both on the throwing shoulders. So you don't like to see that. Taylor Heineke, don't hate going to him. If you guys saw my core plays video, relatively good value play right there. Good matchup against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have gone absolutely torched. Again, you can pair him up with Humphreys. You can put Terry McLaurin in there. McLaurin's always a good play, especially in a high-scoring game. And finally, our last two guys, I'm not going to talk about these guys that I'm fading down here. Maybe I'll mention like a word about them or something. But Derek Carr, love the play on this slate. He's definitely sneaky. He's obviously extremely cheap, only $5,600. The Broncos matchup on paper does not look great, but I'll challenge you, just watch last week's tape. The Steelers absolutely destroyed that secondary, and the Steelers looked absolutely dreadful before that. So it's one of two things, and I'm hoping it's the first. The Steelers offense is really good, right? That'd be the first thing. Or the second would be that this Broncos defense is just heavily overrated. They've played some bad teams to this point. That is the far more likely scenario. So Derek Carr, somebody who was absolutely torching the entire NFL before the whole John Gruden saga, in last week's tough loss, that kind of thing. Expect a little bit of a rebound here. Somebody who didn't really like Gruden. Gruden was always trying to trade Derek Carr. Anytime there was a quarterback on the market, Gruden was always talking him up. There's always rumors about him trying to trade Derek Carr, that kind of thing. I mean, maybe he's happy he's gone. I don't know. And then finally, our last guy, we're going to talk about these fades. I mean, Justin Fields, dumpster fire of a team. Cowboys defense has been relatively good. Mac Jones, not a high volume passer. Davis Mills had the game of his life last week. Not likely to do that 2 weeks in a row. Carson Wentz also had a very good matchup against that Ravens team. The Texans team is a good matchup, but he's also garnering some ownership. You see right here, I have him projected for 2.9% ownership. Could be closer to 3, even 4% ownership. And in this range, that is quite a bit of steam behind a player. I'm going to go ahead and see if there's any other comments in the chat, and then we'll hop into our running backs. CBO says, I like Humphreys as a run back for the Chiefs stack. Absolutely. It's a relatively cheap run back as well. So I like it in a pure stack for the Washington side. I also like it as a run back. So completely agree there. So let's hop over to our running back rankings. Let me go ahead and share that window now. Second. All right, cool. It's not up here yet. Let's see. Is it up there? Cool. All right. Just had to check on the streaming software there. So let's go into our running backs. And there are quite a few good situations here at running back. Quite a few guys that were injured coming into the week that are a little bit banged up. So there's actually a few backups that I'm targeting in DFS, which is always going to be a very good spot in terms of ownership. People are scared shitless to play backups, but we see it week in and week out. There's always that backup that ends up vulturing a touchdown or two, ends up getting more usage than we expect. And I have a few really good candidates for that this week, which we'll hop into. And with that being said, I just want to talk about those situations before we even hop into the stud tier here. So first situation would be Tony Pollard, right? So over in the Cowboys, we have Ezekiel Elliott who's dealing with that back injury. And again, it looked a lot worse than it was last week. Somebody who didn't play much after that injury, and he's on a quote unquote snap count. And for what we know, that could be a 99% snap count where he makes sure that he rests every once in a while, or it could be a true snap count of like 20, 30 plays, right? We don't know the situation, but even to this point, Tony Pollard has gotten a ton of usage. Somebody who has been the change of pace back, has been better in terms of a per carry basis, has been better out of the backfield as a passer. And you could definitely argue that he's been the better running back this year. So I expect them to lean on Pollard in this game. Somebody who's a very good price tag. He's $5,600 on the slate. You see one of the lowest owned plays on the entire slate at running back at 3.9%. Absolutely love the play. Again, people are scared to play these backups, but I'm not going to be in this situation. And who was the other backup? There, let me find it, guys. Okay, Nyheim Hines. That's right. So other backup that I'm considering playing, Nyheim Hines. So somebody who has a very good matchup against this Texans team. And again, we expect this to be a blowout. So they're going to be running the ball a lot more than usual. I do like Jonathan Taylor on this slate for that same reason. Obviously going to get a ton of yards, but Nyheim Hines is likely to see a lot more carries as a result. You know, somebody who can very well score a touchdown or two. Maybe that's why they end up blowing out this team. He ends up seeing 6 to 7 carries out of the backfield. That's going to be more than enough usage to pay off a $4,800 price tag. So somebody who's a little bit of a sneaky play. Again, he's not a starter, so you're seeing relatively low ownership, just 3.2% right there. So I like going there as well. Let's talk about some of our stud options for this week, though. The guys that you came here for, the people that you're going to be using your salary on. First and foremost, talked about Austin Eckler a little bit earlier on this week. You can use him in these charger stacks. Obviously, very good out of the backfield as a pass catcher. In PPR formats, like we have here on Draftkings, ends up being a very good play. So very good matchup against this Ravens team. I'm not afraid of using him with Justin Herbert and stacks. Somebody, if you guys saw my core plays video, I absolutely love this week. It's Dalvin Cook. Same kind of thing with Eckler. Obviously gets plenty of targets out of the backfield. Could very well end up scoring a receiving touchdown or two and pay off in a stack with Kirk Cousins. So obviously Cousins a little bit cheaper, end up getting a little bit more salary that you can use to spend up on Cook. So I like using that a little bit more than somebody like Justin Jefferson, just because of the ownership difference. Obviously Dalvin Cook, 18.7% ownership. But if you look at the receiver side, you have Justin Jefferson with nearly the same amount of ownership at a position with even more leverage. So I like Dalvin Cook in this situation. Aaron Jones, kind of meh on, right? I think he's an all right play. He projects all right. You can see 2.4x in terms of point per dollar right there. But again, this could be very well be a blowout. You know, he's dealing with a little bit of a stinger right now. Isn't at complete capacity or anything like that. So AJ Dillon, we've seen him get plenty of touches over these past few weeks. Excuse me there. And that could continue, right? So Aaron Jones, somebody who probably needs to see 25 touches to pay off his salary tag. I'm just worried about the touches. Ezekiel Elliott, we already been over the situation. I'm not playing him in DFS. I think that injury situation is extremely scary. It's definitely keeping me off of him in terms of my DFS ownership. Jonathan Taylor, again, we just talked about as well. Love that situation there against the Texans. I mean, huge spread, very good matchup against that really soft front seven. Antonio Gibson, I won't be playing. I expect the Chiefs to get ahead. Obviously, Antonio Gibson to kind of be rolled out of that game plan because not only is he a bad blocker, not somebody that you can put back there and use in pass coverage, also somebody who doesn't have the best hands. So J.D. McKissick, do I have him on here? I don't. So J.D. McKissick, guys, I believe he's playing. I don't believe he's injured or anything like that. Also somebody I'm going to use as a little bit of value this week, and that just comes down to game script. I expect Antonio Gibson to be a little bit taken out due to them being behind. And as a result, McKissick going to see plenty of snaps, going to see plenty of targets out of the backfield. Also a better blocker. So that's why you're going to see him playing a little bit more there. Joe Mixon is kind of chalk on this slate. I'm at 14.1% ownership, which I don't love at all. The matchup against the Lions is great, though. So Going to have to monitor that a little bit. If he's somebody who gets close to 20% owned, that kind of thing, I may have to think about a fade, but at this point, still playing him. Next up, we have Kareem Hunt, who we talked about this a little bit before. He could be mega chalk. Great matchup there, though, against the Cardinals. Again, their quarterback a little bit crippled. Both quarterbacks dealing with shoulder injuries, so Hunt going to get a ton of touches. We need to make sure he's playing, though. So if anyone gets news on that at any point, by the way, about Kareem Hunt, whether he's playing or whether he's sitting, that kind of thing, go ahead and let me know. I'd be ever so grateful. All right. So let's get through some of these mid-tier options. Love Darrell Henderson. So kind of like I talked about before, this Giants team is decimated by injuries. They're dealing with a lack of momentum on offense after having Saquon go down, just heartbreaking losses as well. Darrell Henderson Jr. going to get a ton of touches. And if he ends up being a blowout, that kind of thing, he could put up a massive score. Already talked about Tony Pollard. Devontae Booker is going to be starting for the Rams. Starting for the Giants against the Rams. Looked very good last time out, but I question his upside. Again, this Rams defense is extremely stout, very much so against the run as well. So you see them really good matchup, at least in terms of the numbers so far, but a lot of that's just come down to circumstance. They're such a good pass offense that by default, you're going to get a little bit more rushing upside. But when they really hunker down against the run, when they really feel like they have to, they're efficient. Let's talk about some of the cheap options on this slate. Love going to Darrell Williams, obviously the starter for this Chiefs team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is hurt, not going to be playing for quite some time. I believe he's even on the IR. So Darrell Williams, very used to this offense, somebody who is very familiar with this Andy Reid offense, has a lot of confidence from the coach, can be used on all three downs, good as a blocker, also good out of the backfield as a pass catcher. So love going there. It's a really good price tag there at $4,900. Already talked about Nyheim Hines. I think he's a little bit of a sneaky play. J.D. McKissic is not on this list. Somebody I will be playing as a little bit of value this week. Not even sure what his price is, but I'm sure it's good enough. Khalil Herbert is going to be chalk. It's chalk well worth eating, though. You can see nearly 17% ownership, but he's going to be starting for this Bears team. Somebody who was obviously a relatively high draft pick, was really explosive in college, was able to catch the ball out of the backfield, that kind of thing. So Khalil Herbert, I do like in this situation. They're at $4,600. So going to go ahead and check the chat down here, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know. Feel free to put any questions you guys have down in the chat. It could be about what we're talking about. It could be about season-long fantasy. It can be a one-on-one, whatever you guys want to talk about. That's what I'm here for. So Josh says, Lamar, Hollywood, Andrew Stacks. So that is going to be relatively popular, and I'm not a huge fan of using Lamar Jackson stacks, and here's why. It comes down to the rushing upside. Somebody like Lamar Jackson is going to get a lot of his fantasy points by running the ball, and when that happens, that obviously takes away from some of those wide receivers. When you're stacking an offense, you usually want it to be an offense that can cascade off of each other, right? That can snowball. When one player is playing well, it impacts the others. And an example that would be the Chargers team. When Justin Herbert goes out there, has a very good game, you're looking at least two of those receiving options, usually having a massive game. Sometimes it's Austin Eckler out of the backfield catching a pass or two. And I'm much more willing to go to those kind of stacks than a Lamar Jackson one. You can see you have three players from the same team right there. And we saw that pay off on Monday Night Football. So everyone's going to be playing that stack this weekend. So not only is it going to be extremely popular, I would argue it's extremely unlikely to repeat. We just don't see that happening in the NFL. Teams don't go out there and score 40, 50 points, 2 games in a row very often. It's once in a blue moon when that happens. So hopefully that answers your question there. I'm not going to be stacking Lamar Jackson. He is in my player pool. Again, we talked about him. He's somebody who projects relatively highly. Just don't like stacking him. Dropping Birdie says Swift or Hunt. For me, it's definitely Hunt. It's not even close in my opinion. I think that Hunt just going to get a ton of touches. Again, we have to check on his status here, but they essentially kept him out of practice to keep him fresh. Because this is such a run-first offense. They obviously trust him a lot more than somebody like D'Ernest Johnson. So I think Kareem Hunt is just in a very good situation there in terms of the game. Obviously, a high-scoring game against the Cardinals. Also going to be relied on with the quarterback in a little bit of a hurting situation. Cool. So let's talk about a few guys on here that I won't be playing. So a few of the chalky options that I have down as a fade. And then we'll hop over to the wide receivers. So down in this bottom range, you guys see guys like Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray. I'm not going to be playing. Again, just the offense is so concentrated on guys like Lamar Jackson. That those are the guys that I'm trying to focus on. You can see Chase Edmonds is fade. Again, that offense, I expect that to struggle mightily with Kyler Murray and that injury. DeAndre Swift is a fade for me on the slate. Somebody who's dealing with an injury right now also gets a ton of targets and touches taken by Jamal Williams, who, in my opinion, if I were the coach of the Lions, I'd be starting Jamal Williams. Just better on a per snap basis, better in terms of a pure rushing threat. Might not have the same kind of hands that somebody like Swift has, might not have the same route running ability, but why not use Williams on first and second down and bring in Swift for third down? I think that'd be a much better allocation of their talent, but fortunately, I'm not the coach of the Lions, or else I'd be making that change. So we're going to go over to the wide receivers now. So let me go ahead and bring this up on my end. Okay, let me share my screen here. This is a pain in the butt. I'm going to end up getting better streaming software. I'm going to get some overlays and stuff, guys. So it'll look better in the future. So bear in mind with me now. Hopefully it's up there. Yes. Okay. So we got our wide receivers up here. Bunch projected this week. So even on a 9-game slate, we have 64 wide receivers projected. And a lot of that just comes down to us understanding the roles of these teams now. I mean, obviously, have a much better sample size at this point. We understand the target shares of these teams. We know who comes in as a little bit of a change of pace type of wide receiver and that kind of thing. And there's actually quite a few guys further down the board that I will be playing. So you guys can see in this cheap range. I'm not going to talk about them right off the bat. And quite a few guys that I'm willing to play on this slate. All right. Sorry. Hopefully you guys can't hear my cat there. She's being a nuisance right now. All right. At number 1, our favorite play on the slate is going to be Tyreek Hill. Actually, let's do our injury report real quick. So before we hop into that, we need to check on the injury report because I'm assuming we've gotten some type of update. So let me go ahead and share this here, and then we're going to hop right into the wide receivers because this is important, especially at the wide receiver position. When guys are out, it opens up a ton of value. So Tyson Williams is going to be inactive. Didn't really see that coming. So Latavius Murray could be a little bit of a better play. Might have to cycle back on that one. Let's see. Allen Robinson active, expected that. Mixon, same thing. All these guys we expected to be active, and they are. Danny Amendola doesn't really impact anything. He wasn't going to be fantasy relevant anyways. All these guys we expect to be active. Good thing to see Tyreek Hill there. Same thing with Mike Williams. So Darius Slane inactive. Was not expecting that one. That's interesting. And Tony is active. So Kadarius Tony, an even better play now, was already somebody who you'll see here in my player pool. I was going to have in there. Definitely projects a little bit better now. And Terry McLaurin active. We expected that. Damian Brown active. We did expect that. Anthony Gandy Golden not going to be a play on this slate. So yeah, so we got our injury update there. So thank goodness that was a very good timing right there. We have a question down in the chat we'll get to. So Josh says, would you play Cooks, Thielen, or Pittman over at Hollywood then? Cooks, yes, Cooks. Cooks is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. He's very much so mispriced. He had a bad week last week, and Mills had a very good week. And he's had a lot of that production when Mills didn't look very good. So imagine if he goes out there and has a good game with Mills clicking. I mean, could put up 30 real fantasy points, that kind of thing. I love Cooks on this slate. He's just the only healthy body for that team, the only real threat on that team. Let's get back to these wide receiver picks here. Okay. All right, there we go. So back to the wide receivers. Let me make sure it's good on that end. It is. All right, so we know Tyreek Hill is active, which makes him one of my favorite plays on the slate. Again, I think this Washington football team has a little bit of an underrated offense, so I do expect this to be a little bit of a shootout. And at $8,500, that's a good enough price tag, right? So you're not crippling yourself at every other position by playing him. Devontae Adams, also an excellent play. A little bit of blowout risk, like I mentioned before. Obviously, this Bears team, a little bit of a dumpster fire, so might not have true 30-point ceiling or anything like that, just because you might not see a ton of usage in the second half. But in cash, I don't hate him in GPPs either. He's somebody I'll be going to. Next up at number 4, so Justin Jefferson, obviously going to be a play. We love that stacking options with Chris Kirk. Sorry, I called him Chris Kirk. I don't know why I call him Chris Kirk. I'm thinking golf now, guys. Obviously over there with Kirk Cousins. Cooper Kupp, so definitely going to be a fade. I talked about in my fades video, and a lot of this comes down to the situation with the Giants, right? They're such a dumpster fire that we're expecting them to get blown out in this game. Cooper Kupp's probably not going to see as much usage, expecting them to run the ball a little bit more. Also, he's just overpriced. He's $7,900. Still seeing plenty of ownership there at 8.8%. So that's why he's a fade for me there. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm kind of meh on, right? Obviously somebody who's by far the best target in this game. This is a relatively high scoring game, but I'm worried about Kyler Murray, and I'm worried about all his targets as a result. That injury is definitely going to hinder this offense, I think, a little bit more than a lot of other people expect. We got a question in the chat here. Say, which is a better value, Chase or Higgins? So I don't believe they're in the same price range. So let's go ahead and take a look. So Chase is $6,700 and Higgins down here at $5,300. So if you're talking pure value, I still think it's Chase just because of the actual projections here. You can see that I have Chase as a fade though, right? So the only reason I was on the fade, I'm still going to play him in my stacks with Joe Burrow, is the ownership's a little bit higher than I expect, right? Somebody who has seen the price hike, has gotten a little bit more attention from the community as a result. I mean, he's just gone off to a blazing start, but we can't rely on him to go out and get an 80-yard touchdown every week. So I'd say Chase there. I think Higgins is an all right play. You see, I'm not too thrilled about playing him. He's on my pool, but I definitely say Chase there. Just they're not in the same price range, so not sure if that impacts your whole lineup. Spending up for somebody like Chase, if that $1,700 or that $1,500, whatever it is that important? Let me know the rest of your lineup if that's something that you need to figure out. It's just hard for me to tell without knowing the rest of your lineup and how you have that build going. Let's talk about one of my favorite plays on the slate. It's going to be DJ Moore here at $7,300. Obviously, a very good matchup against this Vikings team. Going to be a relatively high scoring game and somebody who's in a very good bounce back spot. Obviously, was a fade of mine last week. Ended up having a really bad week. I think he has a much better matchup this time around. He's not going to be dealing with Darius Slay. And I think he's in a very good spot at that price tag. We just talked about Jamar Chase. CeeDee Lamb. I don't love anyone from this Cowboys offense. A lot of that just comes down to the fact that I expect them to blow them out. This Patriots offense looked really dreadful. I mean, the only game they actually looked good in was against the Bucs, and that's because Bill Belichick threw the complete kitchen sink at them, saved all his best plays for that game. It obviously was his Super Bowl for that year. They're not going to look the same after that. I mean, they went right back to being a shitty team the week after. They ended up winning the game against the Texans, but they hardly won, and the Texans are dog shit. So I think that speaks volumes. Keenan Allen there at $6,400. Great matchup against the Ravens. This seems like a complete misprice in my opinion. You can see he's one of the higher point per dollar plays on the slate. Even a little bit lower owned than I would have expected. So love Keenan Allen on the slate. Robert Woods, I love going to. He's somebody who's a lot cheaper than somebody like Cooper Kupp, also coming in with a lot lower ownership. So if you're going to take anybody from that Rams team, he's by far my preferred target. Same thing with Amari Cooper. Again, we do expect the Cowboys to win this game, so it's not like they're going to go out there and put up a goose egg or something like that. I just expect some of these cheaper options to be the guys I go to, because not only do you get a little bit of salary flexibility, you also get the decrease in ownership. So Amari Cooper, somebody who's a little bit better in terms of PPR upside, just better in terms of actually catching the ball. And in a game where you might see a lot of dink and dunk passes against a Bill Belichick type defense, he has a high enough floor to pay off in a PPP. We talked about Brandon Cooks in that question just now. He's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. You can see in terms of point per dollar is one of the highest plays, especially in this price range on the entire slate. Don't love the matchup against the Colts, but love the opportunity. He's the only guy on that offense with even a semblance of talent. Adam Thielen there at the same price tag. I love going there as well. You can see he's almost at that same type of projection. Somebody I'll have a ton of. I love going to both these players even in the same lineup. They're just very good plays in terms of point per dollar, and they give you quite a bit of flexibility to pay up at running back or even at tight end, where I really like Darren Waller and I really like Travis Kelce, which we'll get to here in a few. Let's get down to let's see if there's any questions down in the chat. Which we do. So, and I'll remind you guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them down in the chat. Josh says, I have Higgins in right now. Yeah, and let me see who you have the rest of the lineup. So you said my lineup is Lamar, Henderson, Hunt, Cooks, Higgins, DJ Moore. Yeah, I'd keep Higgins then, right? So I like the rest of the plays in that lineup. If you ended up spending up to Chase, which I don't think is a massive leap in projection. I mean, you're probably talking like 5-6 points. You're taking out one of those plays in that list that I love. One of my favorite plays on the slate. So, and that's Khalil Herbert there at flex. Cool. I like that lineup, man. And you said that's a cash lineup? Yeah, I like that a lot for cash. Robin Birdie says, how about a stack with Carr, Waller, and Renfro? Yeah, we're gonna get to Waller. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate period. So definitely there with you. Um, even Renfro. I mean, the guy is very good in terms of point per reception, that kind of thing. I like that a lot. So yeah, we're gonna get to Darren Waller. He's one of my sneakily one of my favorite plays in the entire slate. Very good price tag. Also not getting a ton of ownership. Cool. So let's get back into these wide receivers. And again, if you have any questions, throw down chat. I'll get to them when I see them. So we have Otto Beckham Jr. here at $5,100. He's due for a ceiling game at some point. He's just too talented. Obviously, a little bit more healthy. He's completely back from injury at this point. A relatively high scoring game here. And I think the beauty of Odell Beckham Jr. is that he doesn't need to catch the ball 60, 70 yards downfield to pay off. He's somebody who is very good after the catch, one of the most explosive players in the NFL, period. And while he is coming back from a devastating injury, again, I think it's just a matter of time before he breaks out. So I'm playing him. It might not be this week, but in this next month, he's going to have a massive performance, and I want to make sure I'm there. Sterling Shepard, he's one of the only guys for this Giants team that's going to be healthy. They have him and Tony. So just in terms of opportunity, he's going to have plenty of targets here. Could get some garbage time usage as well, so don't hate going there. Robbie Anderson, I'll be perpetually waiting for him to come back from the depths. He might just be a bad player at this point. So let's see how I'm down as a play. I'm not as convinced. I'm probably going to switch that ownership over to Hunter Renfro. Anderson, while he was such a good player last year, he was a top 25 fantasy producer at that position. He's been dreadful this year. I mean, he's even dropping wide open passes. It's just not a good look. I also like Rondell Moore, so it should be noted. Rondell Moore, extremely explosive, same kind of guy where can take a short pass and turn it into something nice. You can see I don't have him in my pool as of right now. I'm going to run my lineups as soon as we get out of here. I assume that he'll probably be somebody I end up squeezing in there. T.Y. Hilton, a pure flyer play. Again, we have no idea the kind of snap load that he's expected to play. He got activated off IR. If he ends up playing all the snaps in this game, which I'd probably put it like a 50-50 probability, that kind of thing, he's a smash play at $4,100. I mean, the guy is seemingly the number one wide receiver on this team. And at $4,100, I mean, it should be pretty obvious that would be a good spot there. Again, I wouldn't play it in cash or anything like that. We have no idea the snap load that he's going to play. But there is a situation out there. There is a parallel universe out there where he ends up playing all the snaps today and ends up being the best player on the slate. Darius Slayton is out, so he needs to get changed to a no. He was a surprise inactive. We did not expect that. Kendrick Bourne, I'm all right playing him. You know, he's clearly got a rapport with Mac Jones, but Mac Jones not going to be lighting it up or anything like that. So it's more of like a meh play. Probably have him in like 3 or 4 lineups. We talked about KJ Osborne a little bit more. Very, very good price tag. Somebody who's explosive, can take a short gain and make it a long gain. I really try to look for some of these just explosive big play threats down low because they can pay off with one play, which I kind of like. You're not going to see many guys down low that have consistent roles in an offense, right? People like Hunter Renfro are like 1 in a million down here, where there's somebody who plays every snap, gets a ton of catches, that kind of thing. So I like going there. Adam Humphries, we already talked about too. Going to be getting plenty of snaps here, likely to start with Curtis Samuel out. Could also get a few more catches because we have Logan Thomas out. Also with Terry McLaurin dealing with a little bit of a stinger. Van Jefferson Jr., I like playing him too. He's the number 3 wide receiver for this Rams team, but has had quite a few ceiling performances. You know, you've seen a deep play threat from him. You've seen him as a reliable, just outside threat on 3rd down. So I think he's got sneaky good upside there. Jared Guyton, same kind of thing. He's on that Chargers team. I believe he's the 3 or even number 4 wide receiver for them. But gets enough playing time. You know, he's going to see about 25 snaps per game, that kind of thing. This is one of the highest scoring games on the slate, so I don't hate taking flyers in that game. Damian Brown expected to play. Again, he's like a pure flyer play here. The Chiefs are expected to win. I do expect them to get out to a relatively handed lead. So Damian Brown can end up scoring in garbage time, can end up scoring just against prevent defenses, right? Getting a bunch of catches, that kind of thing. So I don't hate him there. $3,300. And then Chris Moore, if you're going to go the whole way down low, if you're going to take anyone outside of Brandon Cooks on the Texans, I guess take Chris Moore. We'll leave it at that. I guess take Chris Moore is what I'll say, right? Next question down here. We have a question from Josh. He says, Woods, Lockett, or Higgins in a full PPR league? Oh, Lockett for sure. Lockett for sure, man. So Geno Smith is playing quarterback tonight for the Seahawks, obviously against very own Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to have a world of trouble. So he's not going to be looking to get the ball downfield. He's going to be throwing a lot of quick passes. So Gerald Everett, I really like a tight end, but I also like Tyler Lockett. Somebody who is going to be playing out of the slot, going to be running a lot of those short intermediate routes. So I really like Lockett in that situation there. Cool. So let me bring up my tight end projections here. Here we go. And let me share my screen. Cool. And I'll remind you guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them down in the chat. I'll get to them when I see them. After we do these tight end projections, I'll get to any questions we have in the chat. And then I got to get out of here to make my lineups because I got 300 lineups to enter today and was not able to do that before the stream. So we're gonna have to hustle up and get our lineups in. So with that being said, let's hop into the tight ends. So again, get your questions in before we get off the stream. So we have Travis Kelce there at $7,000. A little bit cheaper than we're used to seeing him, right? He was $8,000 just a few weeks ago. Has a relatively good matchup against the Washington football team. And this is a 9-game slate. So there's quite a bit of opportunity cost in not playing one of these high-end tight ends. So really like Travis Kelce on the slate. Also really like Darren Waller. You can see Kelce is 14.8% owned and Waller 11.2%. So definitely going to see ownership there. Probably see, this is where it comes down to, right? So if you want to get leverage on them, you kind of have to pick one or the other. And for me, I'm definitely going to have a ton of Patrick Mahomes stacks. So it makes me think I should play Travis Kelce. But Darren Waller, at that price tag, I have him projecting a lot higher, right? So you can see at 2.8 point per dollar and just 2.7 up there. So I'm a little bit split on this, right? Because, I can play 30% of both of them, get a little bit of leverage here and there. But then I'm looking at hardly getting any leverage on the rest of the field. And there's definitely some of these cheaper tight ends that I like, even some of these mid-tier options that have at least a ceiling game in them. We're going to have to see when I get to building my lineups what we do here, but really like each option. Really want to play both of them in my pool, but might not be able to. We're really going to have to see that. If I had to take a choice right now, stacking aside, it would be Darren Waller. Keeping stacks in mind, though, Travis Kelce is a huge opportunity cost in those Chiefs stacks. So we'll have to see. T.J. Hawkinson, somebody I really do like on the slate, though. Again, he's been injured for quite some time, hasn't really been himself, but all reports are that he looks really good this week. The questionable tag was a little bit more as a precaution, just in case anything flared up throughout the week. So like the matchup against the Bengals, not going to be one of the highest. Here, my cat's being annoying. Oh boy. I apologize for that, guys. My cat was being very obnoxious. My neighbors were probably having a fit. So anyways, TJ Hawkinson. So again, he was injured. So a lot of people are going to be hesitant to play him, but all the reports say that he looks good, like this matchup against the Bengals as well. Not going to be playing Mark Andrews. So he was in my video for my top 6 tight ends. And while he is a higher play in terms of points per dollar, he's getting a ton of ownership. So I had him at 9.2% ownership this morning. I have him right now closer to 15, maybe even 16% ownership. He's a pure ownership fade for me. So not like he doesn't project well or anything like that, but somebody who, again, when it comes down to game theory, when it comes down to just the bias that people have on him right now. I mean, they saw that huge game of Monday Night Football. It was a primetime game, and they expect that to happen again, and that's just not going to happen. So that's why I'm taking a stand against him this week. Don Schultz, a little bit more expensive than my liking. $4,900. I don't really understand this price tag. And you could say the same thing about Noah Fant, even the same thing about Tyler Higbee here. They're priced up a little bit higher than they should be, right? If we spend up just a little bit more, we get guys like TJ Hawkinson, people like Mark Andrews, or even if just $1,000 more than that, the best plays at tight end at the slate. So I definitely see myself playing these 2 elite tight ends a little bit more than most people, even Tyler Hawkinson. A few of the guys that I am mixing in down low. So Evan Ingram there at $3,400, Jared Cook there at $3,200, and Ricky Seals-Jones at an even $3,000. All of them will be starting. All of them have some injuries to the offense or have a good matchup. So with Ingram, obviously a lot of guys down on offense. Same thing over in Washington football team. Got him starting because Logan Thomas is hurt. Also have Curtis Samuel not playing. In terms of Jared Cook, just a very good matchup, right? This Ravens team not good against tight ends because they're the 29th ranked team against tight ends in the NFL. Also a team that just lets up a ton of points. So Jared Cook is a little bit touchdown dependent, but I think he gets there this week. Let's see if there's any questions down in the chat. And we don't. So that's all we've got for this week. Thank you guys for stopping by. As always, I got to get out of here to go ahead and make my lineups. I've got a ton to get to, but if you guys haven't already liked the video, if you haven't already liked the stream, make sure you go ahead and do so. Also, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I post tons of content here on the channel. I post content for the main slate. I post it for all the showdown slates. Of course, we've got my Patreon projections page. Those are all the projections you saw throughout the video. So if you want direct access to them so you can make your own lineups, so I obviously update them when it comes up to game time. I'm going to update with them with my player poll when I get it here in a minute. All that kind of fun stuff. Make sure to go ahead and join. I'll also put a link down in the description for that. So again, thank you guys for stopping by. Good luck with all of your lineups. Until next time, peace.